If the Nuggets are going to struggle in the postseason, it's good to start looking at the offseason now. Not to get too far ahead of the cart, so to speak. We'll talk about it, plus about how Denver has to kind of keep it together over this last stretch of games. We'll preview the upcoming road trip and more here on Locked On Nuggets.
You are Locked On Nuggets, your daily Denver Nuggets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Nuggets, your daily Nuggets podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for joining us and making us part of your day, being an everydayer, hanging out with us Monday through Friday. Today's show is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. My name is Matt Moore. I'm the senior NBA writer for the Action Network. I'm also the writer of a little Substack called thedenverdig.com, where I've got a piece up about how this is the worst kind of team to be a fan of. It's actually worse to be a fan of like the Kings for the last 20 years. But this type of team is pretty tough to root for because they're so good, but also not good enough. And I wrote about that and all the dynamics of it over at the Denver Dig. You can catch more on Ryan Blackburn's thoughts at Mile High Sports and the Pickaxe and Roll podcast. He's with me tonight for No Jinx because we never, ever, ever jinx anyone. Today's show, we'll talk about previewing the upcoming road trip for the Denver Nuggets with some big matchups versus the Western Conference teams. If they don't decide to rest guys, which they desperately need to, according to Ryan and I. We'll talk about how they need to figure it out together or fall apart. And we're going to discuss up first how playoffs are going to define Denver's offseason. So I want to talk to Ryan about this okay.
Let's go.
Ryan's like, yes, let's talk about trades. Anything like watching this team. Look,
I didn't say a word I never say a word during your intros. I try to cede you the floor, let you set the stage for the episode, but I just wanted to acknowledge to the audio listeners, hello, I am also here.
Yes, he is also here. I do like our show format actually, because we don't do like the, hey, how you doing? No. I always think it's like a little unnecessary because I'm never going to be like, actually, I'm going through some stuff. Like you can, like if you're not good, then just assume I'm good.
Down it, like it must be a Nuggets game.
Exactly. All right. So I asked Ryan last night on last night's show if the Nuggets season was effectively over with this Wizards game, which is like a vast overreaction. And this is one of the struggles is like they just keep going. They just keep they're going to play the Warriors on Monday. Like that's what they're going to do is they're going to play the Warriors and then they're going to play the Lakers and then they're going to play Portland and Houston and Chicago. And then like they have all these games left. And so they're going to, and we could feel entirely differently by the time that we get to April than we do now. We probably shouldn't, to be honest with you. We probably should keep some level of level-headedness, but the fact that Denver was unable to summon the energy to play defense enough to beat the Washington Wizards on the second night of a back-to-back at home was illustrative of a problem they don't seem to be able to solve. DTSC, who was always hanging out with us and willing to show the negativity, can you guys address Jokic's post-game comments that went viral? So Jokic just... I will always tell you, never, ever, 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 ever react to a Nikola Jokic quote that you see in print. Always listen to the interview itself because you are never, ever, we are unable to convey how he sounds when he talks because it is never like, I'm going to like throw shade. Like when guys want to do that, when they want to send a message, they look right in the camera and they send that message. Jokic just like, he's just making conversation. He's just like answering the question because he's got to answer the question because they make him get up there and do it. So when he's like, yeah, I don't have any, there's no reason to be confident in the defense. That's not about like I don't think that Joker's given up on the season. I don't think that's how he's wired. He might be frustrated. He might have, I think they all have a lack of trust in each other, but I'm not like Joker's mailing it in. That's it. He knows this is useless. I don't think he's that kind of competitor, Ryan.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I think there have been a lot of lessons that he has learned in his career. And one of the lessons was that March basketball doesn't matter that much. And defending well in March isn't like the most important thing. We've seen that before for Denver back in 2023 when they kind of mailed it in because they had the opportunity to do so. Now they're mailing it in because they kind of have to. And like you have to save a little bit of that energy and a little bit of that want to and willingness for the playoffs, I would guess. And they just don't have another guy to go to at the center position on a consistent basis to be able to make sure that Jokic is playing 30 minutes on a consistent basis. he has to save as much energy as possible. And so, as much as I can complain and people can parachute in and complain about defensive effort and intensity and everybody else's defensive effort and intensity, it's really hard. Guys are hurting right now. I have a level of sympathy for that. It's the job, it's the burden that everybody has to have, and so we'll see if they could figure it back out in April because March has not been good to them.
DTSC says Jokic basically said he has no hope in his post game. I just want to tell you, in 2023, he probably felt the same way. Like, I don't think he engages in hope. It's like you either do it or you don't. You do the job and you play, or you don't. That's it. That's it. Like, I don't think
he also did recently say that he thinks that this team can win a championship.
Yeah,
he thinks they have what they need. So like you can't take him serious in one of them and then not take him serious in the other. Like you have to give him the benefit of the doubt on these things and not take this too seriously, because these guys are so frustrated at having to talk to the media all the time, man. You guys don't fully appreciate it.
Yeah, it's really bad. They do not like the 10
they don't like me.
They, have to take. they don't like the 10 minutes they have to take out of their day 3 times a week.
I know.
So, all right. Defense is clearly the biggest problem here. It's hard to see a way to rectify that with the internal development of the roster. Like, MPJ is not going to be a way better defender next year. Jamal's not going to be a way better defender next year. If they lose in the first round, I think drastic changes are probably necessary. If they lose in the second round, I think substantial changes are probably necessary. And those are the most likely outcomes. Like, those have to be considered the more likely outcomes than making the conference finals or winning the championship by a pretty wide margin at this point. How, I will ask you kind of like, are you at the point of, we all kind of thought they needed to get a veteran 3-and-D guy at the deadline. That was what they needed to kind of shop for. Is one enough? I do want to ask you that, though. Is one enough? Like, we kind of thought they were one guy short. Like, yeah, it'd be nice to have another backup center. But they kind of pieced that together well enough. Are you at a point where you're like, no, this roster needs like at least X amount of changes to the top 8-man rotation?
Man, I don't know. Like, I think that still one guy is good enough to help them win a championship. I really do think that. I think that it makes the job so much easier for everybody else when you just insert one more player into the mix. And hypothetically, you get a healthy Deron Holmes and you get a couple changes to the backup center position in the offseason. Maybe they get a better version of what they wanted with Dario Saric, whatever. But like, fundamentally, if they were going to use this exact same group, you have to add a better 3-and-D player that is a better defender than Christian Braun, so that he doesn't have to be that guy in this particular context. You need somebody that you can take Michael Porter Jr. off the floor for. You need somebody that when you go small, Aaron Gordon doesn't have to, like, you could take Aaron Gordon off the floor and still be okay defensively, because right now they can't. And I just think that you get that flexibility. People really underestimate what one person would change, I think.
Yeah, I think I'm kind of at the point, and like, I don't know what the future of Russell Westbrook holds. I just don't. I think that's still to be determined by the playoff run. But I will say that I do think that if you're going on like a shopping list, I would have 3-and-D bench scorer, because Julian's going to be better, but I don't know that it's like, it would be really great to have like a Jordan Clarkson, just like, hey, guy's going to come in and he's going to give you 15. Like, you're going to get 15 every night from this guy coming off the bench. Every single night, this bench player is going to provide you with 15 points.
A Naz Reid type.
Now, the problem with that, I do think it's fair to say, is like, how do you afford that when you have the 4 guys making what they do?
And you don't.
I'll go further, Ryan. This is with the current CBA. I really believe that you can't have more than 2 large money contracts. I think you can only have 2, and then everybody else has got to be medium, one larger guy who's like really vital on down the line. And so like that creates real problems for reconstructing the roster because it means that you're going to have to move 2 of MPJ, Jamal, and Aaron. And I don't know what that is. I also want to acknowledge for anyone listening to this, it's like, guys, they're not even done with the season yet. Like, they're still the 3rd seed. Yes, like we acknowledge all that, and we are prepared to be wrong. Like, we're totally hopeful that the Denver Nuggets will go on an improbable playoff run and actually play to the level of what their numbers look like, and they make the finals. Like, cool, awesome. We're idiots. News at 11. That'd be fine, but we're trying to deal with the reality of how it feels in this moment and trying to be like, hey, these last couple of games, you need to start assessing who can be a part of this going forward and what needs to change.
At the beginning of this season on Pickaxe, I described this team as past their half-life as a contender. And the reason why I described it that way was because once you get past the half-life, when you're talking about like nuclear bombs and things like that, it gets pretty dangerous, and you feel like everything's a little bit more rickety at that point, and you start to see a lot of these questions really unfold in very visceral ways. And it's not easy for guys to just, bring it like the core 4 has brought it over the course of their tenure together, because we've seen what it looks like when Jokic, Murray, Porter, Gordon are optimized at their apex, feeling good, playing good. At that level, they're the best core 4 in the NBA, or pretty close to it. Now, it kind of seems silly to even talk about it that way with the way that other teams have developed and the way that they have sort of undeveloped over the course of the last 2 years. And it doesn't feel fair sometimes to talk about it that way. But when you're not the best core 4 in the league, it's really difficult to be paying guys like the best core 4 in the league.
We'll talk more about this on the other side, as well as how the Nuggets have to figure it out together. I want to kind of go to break on this, which is, it's fascinating that you kind of said that undeveloped, because MPJ's having a career year and Jamal's actually having a career year. Like, they're individually better and collectively worse.
Yeah.
And that's interesting. We'll talk about that up next here on Locked On Nuggets. NBA fans, get ready. They swoosh, you save. Thanks to Dash Pass, every time a player drops 50 or more points in a game, you score a huge deal the next day. It's simple. When any player scores 50 or more in a game during the 24-25 NBA regular season, Dash Pass members get 25% off an order, up to $10 off the next day from noon to midnight. You can get those late night cravings if you're staying up watching highlights, watching the bracket, or just need a midnight snack. Use Dash Pass to grab something delicious while saving big. Sign up for Dash Pass and be ready to save. When any player scores 50 or more in a game, Dash Pass members, you got to be a member, get 50% off an order the next day, up to $10 off. Just use promo code NBA50 from noon to midnight after a 50-point game on eligible orders at participating merchants. Must have an active Dash Pass account. Terms apply. Visit DoorDash to learn more. We're also brought to you today by FanDuel. March Madness is here, and FanDuel is giving you your chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories, even who's cutting down the nets. I'm going to bet Houston to win the NCAA title. Like that team a lot. I'm very excited because my Missouri Tigers are in the same bracket as the Kansas Jayhawks. And I want to play them again. And then I will talk to Christian Brown about it if Missouri wins. And if they do not win, then I will never mention it to Christian ever again. Visit FanDuel.com and join in on the college hoops action all tournament long. We'll be right back on Locked On Nuggets. Back here on Locked On Nuggets. Thanks for joining us and making us part of your day. Check out LockedOnDaily.com and you can get subscribed to our newsletter. I'll have stuff up there tonight, just previewing the game versus the Golden State Warriors. On Monday, we'll see who plays. The line's a little bit curious in that regard. Injury report: Jamal, Aaron, and Jokic are all questionable. I am kind of wondering. It would be very typical of them to be like, yeah, might not play. Everyone played. Everyone played and played 45 minutes. That's what happened.
It's so it's an ESPN game. And that, to me, like, Denver's kind of screwed at this point, because every time they go on the road, they're on ESPN or they're on national TV. And it just doesn't feel like there are going to be that many options where they can rest, because previously the Greg Popovich story was we're going to rest them against the really good teams and then try to beat up on the bad teams and make sure that we ensure as many wins as possible. And that was like that was an ideal way to get over 50 wins in a season. So I don't know. Denver's up a creek at this point.
There's spots like they're not back on national TV until April 1st after the Lakers game. So they've got games versus Houston on the road. They've got home games versus the Bulls. The Jazz would be a good one to rest guys in. They've got a game versus the Spurs on April 2nd. But yeah, that's kind of how it goes. Although I will say you can get away with a little bit more, especially if you got guys on the injury report. Like Jokic is on there with the elbow. Nobody's going to be like, you rested him. We're going to come after. It's like, no, he's clearly hurt.
He looks like a cyborg when he's wrapped up on the bench.
Yeah, Murray's got has got an ankle sprain. Like we saw it happen. It's fine. All right. So I kind of talked about this, about how like I think it's interesting that you talked about like unevolved, de-evolved, so to speak.
Devolved.
Because one thing that I kind of wrote about today over at the Dig is I talked about how things are so different year over year. I have a stunning stat for you. Are you ready for this?
Let's go.
In losses last season, so amongst all teams when they lost the game, guess where the Denver Nuggets ranked in defensive rating?
Losses among all teams. I'm going to guess it was actually relatively good, like 15th.
Second. They were
so like
second.
they locked in defensively in those games, but they just couldn't get it done offensively.
Yeah. They were the second best defense amongst all teams in losses. Guess where they rank this year?
Oh, I don't have to guess. It's in the bottom 5.
29th.
Yeah.
They went from the second best defense when they lost the game to the second worst defense when they lost the game year over year, with the only change in personnel, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, which we've talked about is not enough to explain the slide.
It's just not enough. Like
but also my kind of the way that I think about that, Ryan, this is something you and I've been arguing about for about 10 days now, is my thought process for that is not, so next year they'll actually be 32nd. It's that, no, like next year they'll probably be like 12th. They'll probably be like 15th, because these things are very much not linear. That's one of the things I think that's interesting when we talk about this, Ryan, is when we talk about the offseason, we can talk about adding personnel or making trades or shifting things. And I think that a change is probably necessary at this point. I'm 100% with you on that. You've been calling for it since the last offseason. I think you're right. And the Nuggets fans are going to be happy. Like some Nuggets fans will be happy if Malone gets fired. Some fans will be happy if MPJ gets traded. Like,
let me push on that real quick, because I think that's important to note. Nuggets fans aren't bad fans if they see an issue, if they identify an issue, if they believe. Like, I think everybody was willing to give it the benefit of the doubt last year for a variety of reasons, or at least a little bit more willing. And then KCP walked away and they didn't really offer him that much money and didn't really replace him in a healthy way. And I think now Nuggets fans are like, okay, time's a ticking. Time's a ticking on taking advantage of having the best player in the world on your team. So I think everybody senses the pressure, and it's okay for them to want to see that. It doesn't make them bad fans.
Yeah, I think it's just short-sighted. I think it's because all fans, I push back on it because it's the grass is always greener. Like everyone's always, you want to know a good example of this? I have Mavericks fans who are just like, Cuban is the problem. They got to get him out of there, and then they can win with Luka. He is wasting Luka Doncic's career. Bad Mark Cuban. Go. Yes, sure. Mark Cuban sold the team. Hooray.
Sure. I will say, okay, the worst possible example of, hey, F around and find out.
No, here's the other thing is they also wanted Donnie Nelson, who was a great GM in this league for 20 years. They wanted him gone.
Yeah.
How's that working out? And this happens all the time.
Of course.
My only thing though is like Bucks fans wanted Mike Budenholzer gone because they wanted to change.
Didn't work. Of course. So I think everybody acknowledges that the grass is not always greener. but the chance of it being green, I think, is very enticing to a lot of people. And it is important to leave open the possibility that the Nuggets will make the right decisions if they do decide to make changes.
I think a lot of it's like you have to just be very careful.
Of
Like
course.
you got to be very careful. And I know that this is one of your things because I've tried to talk to Ryan about this too, where he really wants them to make a move and do something and change it. And I'm like, yeah, but what if they make a move and you're like, oh God, oh that's not what I want. Like
Now, to be fair, I try to present as many options as possible.
Right.
When I go through these scenarios and I try to identify, okay, so this is an option, this is an option, this is an option. None of those may exist. And that's an unfortunate reality that Nuggets fans might face. What if you're looking to break up the core four and you're trying to get better on the defensive end, trying to find a 3-and-D wing, that player may just not exist for the price tag that the Nuggets have willing to offer. And I think they're going to be willing to offer a lot. And that's a pretty sad reality, is that Denver may be willing to go a little bit harder this year, and they won't get it anyway.
I just worry that, like, I will say I'm very against the idea of making a change to make a change. When people are like, do something.
But
like,
they are not making a change to make a change. We have identified that there are issues that they need to solve.
Yes. But also it's like, well, we couldn't really find anything, so we traded MPJ for DeMar DeRozan.
Now, nobody will sign off on that in Denver. 0 people.
The other thing I was,
yeah.
You're laughing. I'm going to save that for when that trade goes down. But here's the other thing, and this kind of is to my point earlier. What if you make all the moves and you have this defense, and then next year it's like, oh man, the offense is bad now.
That is, so that's the thing that Jonathan Sharks, rest in peace. That's the Jonathan Sharks plan of surrounding Jokic with 4 defensive wings that are versatile, trying to surround him with the best possible defense and hope that he can prop things up. And he may not be able to, because he may not be able to handle like that level of workload. Because as much as people like to rag on Jamal, and he was bad early in the year, he did take some pretty clutch shots lately and has been able to take some of the pressure off of Joker when they've decided, hey, we're going to guard you with 3 people. So it is a tough question. And it's why trading a guy like Jamal Murray is very dangerous if you then replace him with, hypothetically, Jalen Suggs.
Mike says Matt talks out 2 sides of his mouth. That's a bad matchup or bad stretches. Young guys are just bad unless they are Julian. No, I've said like Julian's defense is absolutely atrocious. I've said it like pretty consistently.
Yeah, no,
I'm having a guy
on this one.
Like that's different. Here's the other thing is I actually said like, hey, Zeke had a really good month, right? He had a really good February. The bench had a really good February. They've had a bad March. The starters have had bad March. Yeah. So it's like, this is kind of part of it. Is like
Zeke's also in year 5. So like you should expect his months to be better and more consistent than they have been. And he's now starting to figure some things out, but that's the burden of being a young player. You have to start figuring it out really quickly.
And then Mike says also Matt DJ's been good, but now he's unplayable apparently, and Malone doesn't have any options. I've said that DJ should probably play in some of these regular season games, but I also have to be realistic about DJ. Like I have to be realistic about it. I think DJ can eat some NBA regular season minutes, and he has. He's done a really good job eating innings this season, but he's not a playoff guy, and that's okay at this point.
Played more regular season minutes in games than he has in either of the previous 2 seasons already. They have gone to him. And I think it's pretty clear, especially towards the end of his stints, where he was just gassed and he wasn't able to give them what they needed at that time. So he'll come back around to it. I bet DJ's back at the playoff rotation on game 1, night 1.
Coming up, we're going to talk about the road trip and how the Nuggets have to pull together, because this next 4 games are going to be tough. We'll talk about that here on the other side on Locked On Nuggets. Ever take her into your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNBA for half off your first year. And now a message from Locked On Podcast Network.
The NCAA tournament is here, and so is the Bracket Breakdown.
Locked On Podcast Network and Amazon Fire TV channels are teaming up to deliver NCAA tournament coverage like never before. Watch studio shows featuring former players and Locked On's local experts as they guide you through every upset, buzzer beater, and bracket matchup.
Stream it all for free on Amazon Fire TV channel. Search Bracket Breakdown to see it all for free.
It's your team every day.
The final segment here on Locked On Nuggets. Thanks for joining us and making us part of your day. No jinx. We'd never jinx anybody. Says, Matt, you keep saying what if on a change, which I understand, but do you honestly think this team doesn't need a change and isn't worth the risk of change? No, I think it does. I think for me, it's more amount. The impetuousness gets to me where I'm like, think things clearly, like recognize the good. MPJ is a 6'10", 50, 40, 90 shooter. Giving up on him is going to do something to you. Like, there are going to be unintended consequences of that. Michael Malone's gone over his win total every single season that he's been head coach of the Nuggets. They've won a championship and made several playoff runs. Moving away from him is going to change things in a very big way. If you were to trade Jamal Murray or Aaron Gordon, you're moving two guys who Joker is a long-term established chemistry and trust with, and you have to rebuild all of that. And it might be for the best. Change is important. Change happens in the NBA naturally. And for sure, I think that if this team flames out the way it looks like they're going to, you have to take drastic steps to realign things. I think the window is a little bit more open than Ryan does. And there's a lot of different reasons for that. But that doesn't mean that you need to just sit back and run it back. I think the bigger thing to me is about what I look at them, and I don't say that they are so far away. I look at them and go, 2 years they won the title and they've gotten marginally worse. And this year the effort has not been good enough on the defensive end. I think they need reinvigorations in coaching, whether it's by motivation, the voice, or just simply reinventing some of the tactical stuff. I think they need veterans that can defend on the perimeter and knock down shots. I think they needed more options on this roster. I think locking in the number of guys that they did and just being like, yep, Hunter Tyson's just like there. And that's not Hunter's fault.
No, it's Calvin's. Like that's straight up Cal's.
Hunter's a second round pick. Like, Hunter should not be under the pressure to deliver on a guaranteed contract. But you needed that. You need that production that a guaranteed contract provides. You need somebody to come in and do stuff. I think they got to reshape the roster because of the CBA. And I do think the change is necessary, but I'm just simply trying to say fans kind of act like if you trade Jamal, we'll be good. No, what are you trading him for? If we trade Michael Porter Jr., we'll win the championship. Who are you trading him for? If we fire Michael Malone, we'll win the title, and Joker will finally get the coaching he deserves. What if the coach isn't good? What if the replacement isn't good? What if it's not a good fit?
Yeah, I think that they are. If you're trading one of those guys, then it has to be a new reevaluation of what your strengths and weaknesses are. It's going to put you into a different place that you've never been before. The last time that the Nuggets didn't have Murray, Porter, Gordon, Jokic on their roster was back in 2021. It's been 4 years, and they haven't been able to reap the benefits of having those guys on there the entire time, and that sucks. But I do think that the most important thing for Nuggets fans to remember is that this is all really hard. This is really, really difficult. And finding the right mix of players like Denver did, aka they already did it, is very painful. And they got through it, but now having to do it again is twice as much.
Interesting that you think, this is Ashwin Prasad, interesting that you think that reinvigorated coaching can change things. I wonder how different this team would look with Eric Spoelstra, Joe Mazzulla, or maybe even JJ. Do you think you can get them?
Good luck. They're not going to pay for that, coach.
If Eric Spoelstra wants to come to Denver, then sure, I would. That is an argument you can say, even though Malone did beat him. But sure, much better roster, had the best player in the world. Okay, But do you think you're getting Eric Spoelstra? Are you getting JJ? Are you getting Chris Finch? No, you're not. Then you need to think about who you're going to get. And I would also tell you, more importantly, you should think about who is Stan Kroenke going to hire. That's something you should think about.
His name is Mike D'Antoni.
Nuggets have a 4-game road trip coming up this week. They play the Golden State Warriors on Monday. They play the Los Angeles Lakers. They're at the Blazers, and then they're at the Rockets. Let's start here, Ryan. Predict the record in those 4 games.
Oh, let me pull it back up. Say it again. Sorry.
It's Warriors, Lakers, Blazers, Rockets.
Easy to say 2-2. I think they bounce back a little bit. They get a little bit of a break. Well, not really, actually. They're still playing every other day in each of these games. It's not that much of a break.
That's what Malone was left to say, is he was like, well, it does sound kind of silly, but like it does go back to, we don't have any back-to-backs next week. And I'm like, you're playing every other day coming
That's
off of
the threshold.
There's no break.
That's the
Do you remember those stupid ass breaks that the team had in November where they was like they just didn't play for long stretches of time?
Yes. And like it was so weird. They played the fewest games at that point, and the fact is that they screwed up the beginning of the season, and had they been 15-5 instead of 10-10 or 11-10, 15-6, 16-5 or whatever, this time period would not matter as much. Unfortunately, they are not in that place. But I think that 2-2 is the right call. I bet they lose to Golden State because Golden State's beating everybody. I think can I predict that they beat the Lakers in LA? You know what? I can. I think they beat the Lakers in LA. I think they beat Portland, and I think they lose to Houston.
I think I agree with you. Lakers, I think, is like a real coin flip.
Yeah.
Because they're playing, but like when they have Jackson Hayes and they might get Rui Hachimura back, they're really good.
That's
like they're just really good.
insane that's like.
It's true. I checked the numbers and was like, no way. I'm gonna go look at the film and see what's really going on. And then was like,
man,
oh, Jackson Hayes is just really good.
No, he's actually just really good.
Okay, that sucks.
Yeah, for a lot of reasons.
Yeah, and then so the Portland game, Blazers are competitive. That one's actually pretty tough. I'll say that they split Portland-Houston in some regard. Golden State's a loss. Lakers is a coin flip. So there's a good chance, I think, for 1-3 here. And I've been pretty good about predicting these type of things. If I felt like they could get more rest, I would feel differently. If they just had a 2-day rest in there, just 2 days off, I would feel differently, but they just don't have it.
So let me ask you this then. Is the sky falling if they go 1-3?
For fans, yes, but not in
reality.
Like
not for the actual organization.
No.
So what if they play well in those games and they're just highly competitive games that they ultimately lose? Would fans would they care at that point?
No, they don't care. They just
because I would care.
You would care, but no. They will still be. The mentions will still. Our comments will still be.
Honestly, I just at this point the final things that I want to see, Matt, are just progress on the defensive end, showing an ability or a willingness to execute the scheme that is being asked of the team, starting games a little bit better. And look, if you lose a game in the fourth quarter because a team stopped your offense, I don't think that teams are going to stop Denver's offense that much in the playoffs to a certain degree. So, if your defense is good in this stretch, then I honestly don't care what their record is. I just think these are the things you have to work on between now and then, and the record is not as important to me.
Folks saying that they could go 0-4, they could.
Yeah, sure.
I don't think that's how. We're not sitting here being like, yeah, they're too good. They don't. That one of the things I wrote today was they don't have a floor. When they play badly, they are horrible.
Yeah,
horrible defensively. Their magic number for a top 6 playoff spot is 10, with 14 games to go. 7-7, 7-7. Even playing 500 ball probably gets you home. So they're probably they're gonna make the playoffs. We'll just see where they wind up because it's getting really close there.
Thanks for joining in the comments, by the way. Says, problem is, Ryan, we shouldn't be asking for progress on defense when there are 14 games left. Of course. I totally agree with you. This shouldn't be a conversation that we're having to have, but we're having it.
I always have a hard time with this because honestly, I think after March 1st, nothing else matters.
Yeah.
I think you've done all you can do. And this is why I hate it. is these teams like think about this way. If we had just ended the season on March 1st, how do you feel about Denver?
Pretty good.
Pretty good.
Not win a championship good, but like I feel like they are like in that conversation.
Yeah. But instead we have to play all these games when the guys are exhausted, banged up, and everything is wonky. No, everyone's just dragging ass to the end of the season. And you have teams that have done the work all year long get in this kind of spot. It's not just Denver. It drives me nuts with everybody.
Yeah.
Like, I don't like that. It's like, you can just throw stuff together in March and then make a run versus these teams that have put in the work for 5 months are like, we're gassed. We have nothing left and we're playing like garbage. And that's how it is. All right. Thanks for joining us. Appreciate it. Scott, Tony,
Great.
right. Sky is falling. Sky is falling.
Let's go.
Thanks for joining us. Appreciate you guys being with us. We'll see you guys again next time here on Locked On Nuggets.